mic to Judy.
Come over there.
Yeah.
So go ahead and open it up for questions.
Okay.
And we have, Simone has got a mic too, if you talk up loud. If not, we've got a traveling mic with us.
Turn that one down.
What inspired you to make this documentary?
Can you repeat the question for us?
Yes, what inspired me to make the documentary? I come from a family of musicians, and when I was a kid, I played trumpet in my school band, and the guys in the band were really mean to me. So I dropped out at the end of junior high school, and you might say I made the movie as a revenge against them. But the truth is that a friend of mine called me up one day and told me that she met a woman who was 90 years old and told her she had been a drummer in big bands in the 40s. And because I had been around music and musicians all my life and had seen every big band that ever played, I said, no, that's not possible. There were never any women in any of these big bands. And she said, well, this woman swears she was with a big band, and wouldn't that be interesting if she was? And I said, yeah, it would. So I started to do a little research. And before long, I had uncovered about a dozen women who had had careers as big band musicians. And I thought, hey, this is something nobody knows about. So that's really what inspired me to do it. Any other questions? Yes, in the back.
Hi, I'm Sheila. How long did it take you to film all of it in a movie?
From beginning to end, the film took 6 years. Yeah. It ain't easy. The hardest part of all of it was raising the money to do it, because when we started, we had a lot of support right away. And then in 2008, the big crash happened, and all the funding for documentary films just went goodbye. That was it. And so after that, it was a matter of really day by day, just begging people for money, putting out letters asking for support and applying for grants, and it was tough. But that's what took the longest part. Yes?
How did you go about finding all of these female jazz musicians?
The question is, how did I go about finding the female jazz musicians? Once I found one or two of them, they would connect me up with somebody else, and it was almost like, a clearinghouse. I had to be cleared by one for another one to talk to me, because a lot of these women, especially the women in the International Sweethearts of Rhythm, they've been, used and abused over the years, with a lot of people saying that they were going to do stuff on them, and they were going to do this and that, and nothing ever came of any of it. So by the time I came along, most of them were pretty, jaded by a lot of people telling them they were going to do stuff. And so it wasn't until I interviewed a couple of them, and then they told their friends, and then another one would tell another one, and little by little, they all began to come around. Yes?
Obviously, you had a lot of historical film. How did you go about deciding how to sift through each and everything to try to conceptualize it on screen?
Well, that's where my editor came in. I worked with this incredible young man named Osagiana, and he is such a brilliant talent. He's a young man. He's Ghanaian and British, and he came over here to study at USC in California, and quite by accident, we got together. I had hired a different editor, a woman who's a very famous editor, and she worked for me for about 6 months, and I ran out of money, and I couldn't afford her anymore. And she said, well, I have this student at USC who's been assisting me, and he's been helping me sort through your footage, and he really loves this project, and I think he might work with you on the limited budget that you're going to have now. And I said, okay, so I met with him and we talked, And he really did have a good handle on the material, and we started working together. And as soon as we started working together, the project just took on a whole new life. He had such a grasp of how to do this film that we just, it was like dancing with Fred Astaire. All I had to do was follow. So that's how we put the film together. Edward, yes.
I know that in your film you have a multitude of women musicians, but which one is your favorite? How has that affected you as a musician and directing this film?
Oh, that's really hard because musically, I think Melba Liston just really grabs me. Her tone is so beautiful, the way she plays is so beautiful. The one that I think is the biggest heartbreak to me is Vi Red. Vi Red is still alive, and she lives in Los Angeles. And I tried to get her to interview for the movie. She is so bitter about what happened to her that she won't even talk to me about it. I've called her, I keep calling her. And now, the last call I had with her was totally heartbreaking. I called her and said, Vi, the movie's done. I want you to see it. I want you to come to a screening. I want you to, she said, you'll have to call me back. I'm making dinner for my husband right now. And I just, she never answered. She said, I'll call you back. And she never called me back. And I just know that, there's a career that should have blossomed. She should have flourished. She had so much to give, and she was cut off at such a young age. But that's the most heartbreaking thing in the movie to me is Vi Red. So, yes.
What kind of feedback have you received so far about the film, and what are your future plans?
Well, the feedback has been beyond my wildest dreams. We've won 3 awards at film festivals for best film already. Next week we go to the Monterey Jazz Festival, and we have festivals, film festivals and jazz festivals booked all over the world. We're in Belgium next week. We're in Canada at the Montreal Black Film Festival. We're playing in jazz festivals, as I said, and we're playing for the opening of a new museum. Yes?
You're here for our jet.
And we're here. And let me tell you, this man knew before anybody what was going on with this film because he called me 2 years ago and said, I heard about your film and we'd like to show it. I said, it's not even done yet. And he said, well, don't forget us when it is. So I owe him a big thank you because when you get that kind of enthusiasm, when you're not even finished yet, it spurs you on because it's so hard, especially toward the end. It was so hard getting the money to finish the film that knowing that there were people out there waiting for it is what really, really kept me going. So the film is really doing well. Yes?
Besides the fundraising and unreturned calls, what was the most difficult part of
Of
the research?
the research, the most fulfilling part of the research was finding that piece of footage on Vi Red, because there is no footage in the United States on Vi Red. We had to go to Europe to find that, because a lot of these women who couldn't work here had to go to Europe to have careers of any sort. And in Europe, they revered these people. They revered all jazz artists. And so there was footage of Vi Red playing in Europe. And that was the most rewarding piece because we couldn't find anything on it. Yes?
Was there any content or footage that you gathered that, for whatever reason, you weren't able to put into the film?
Yeah, there's a lot. And there's a lot of interviews that we weren't able to put in because of time. We only can do so much. When we put out the DVD version, we'll do some additional, add-ons to it, and we'll include some of that footage. Because there's a lot. Yes?
How have old and new female musicians responded to the film?
They've all loved it. I'm really happy about it. There's only one person who's given me any grief, and it's one of the people that we showed in a short clip, and I didn't put her name up on the screen, and she's mad at me. I'm sorry, there are a few that are mad at me because I did interview them, and they couldn't get it. They didn't film, and they're not happy with me either, so can't please everybody. Yes, somebody else? Yes.
How did you select which women were interviews acted out?
How did I select the interviews that I did in the film? Well, I tried to find people who I thought had made a significant contribution that we could discuss that wasn't known about. And then I tried to find people who were good on camera, because that's an important part of doing a documentary. If your people on camera aren't interesting, then the film becomes less interesting. And these women were such dynamic personalities. So I have other interviews that I did not use, but these are the ones that I thought really carried the story well. Yeah.
What kind of impact do you hope this will have on young female musicians?
Well, I've had a lot of young women come up to me crying, saying, I thought I was the only one. And just to pull them together in some kind of a sisterhood, to know that there are other women like them, that there are women before them who fought this battle, who paved the way, give them courage to continue. That's the impact that I'm hoping the film has, and it seems to be having. Are there any women musicians in the audience? Oh, yeah. Okay, so you know what I'm talking about. Yes,
I had more of a statement than a question.
go ahead.
But I'm a trumpet player, working
Yes.
on my master's
All
at
right.
North Carolina Central. And actually am doing my thesis project on Cora Bryant.
Oh.
So, I mean,
Oh.
just to kind of answer her question too, as far as the feedback and the impact, the reason why I got started on that project.
You want to come up here and say this into the mic, because this is important. Here,
That's good.
Okay.
tell them that again, Matt, in case
I was saying, I'm a master's student at North Carolina Central. Trumpet is my major instrument. And I'm doing my thesis project on Cora Bryant. She was a trumpet player. And one of the ladies over here asked the question. The thing that inspired me to do that was when I got here to work on my master's, I was just heartbroken by the response, from teachers and other students. And I was telling my friend I know I've been a woman my whole life. Can't apologize for that. It's just how it is. But it just really broke my heart to see, oh, girl, you can't play, or we got to put her in the back, blah, 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 blah. And I've been playing since I was 8 years old, and I've never had that type of attitude. So one day I went to my computer, I said, I'm going to find somebody, a trumpet player. I'm going to find somebody. And I saw Cora Bryant's picture. And I got in touch with her through a gentleman that went to Virginia State with me from California. He called me up one day and said, Cora, right? I said, yes. And she answered the phone, and we talked, and in our interviews I was able to meet her, and a lot of the women too in the film I talked to. So, great work what you're doing. And I'm making it one of my goals too, to definitely, do everything I can, because people need to know that we're out here and we're making moves.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Good for you. What's your name?
Yeah, and Cora is the greatest. Cora is fantastic person. But you saw her. She's almost 90 now, and she's still.
86.
How is she?
86.
86? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Anybody else? Yes.
Can you talk about the reunion and the photograph? Did you organize that, and what was that day like?
Yes. That it was my idea to do that photograph, and I came up with that idea about halfway through making the movie, because when you're making a movie, you're looking for kind of an arc of a story from beginning to end, that it starts someplace and goes someplace. And halfway through, I thought, hey, wouldn't it be great if we could do this photo? And so I told my producer, and she told me I was crazy, and then she said, well, maybe we should give it a try. So we did, we pulled all that together, and to this day, both of us think that that's one of the greatest days of our lives. It was so, we were crying all day. We were so touched by seeing these women who some of them hadn't seen each other in 20 years, and some of these young girls who worshiped some of these older women, who were meeting them for the first time, and it was miraculous. It was a miraculous day. And I didn't have to tell anybody where to go or where to stand or what to do. It was like they all knew, like they were bees coming home to the hive. They knew where to go and what to do, and the whole thing happened in a really miraculous way. And the interesting thing was that it was very, very bright sun. And when you're shooting, you don't want bright sun. You want kind of a cloudy effect so it softens the look on everybody. And we kept saying, uh-oh, this is going to be really harsh looking. It's going to be really hard. And then they all got in place, and this cloud came over the sun. And it just hung there for the whole time that we shot. And when we finished, it rained. And it was like, oh my God, this is too much. We can't handle it. And it was just an absolutely miraculous day. So thank you for asking. Yes?
I really like the way that you told this story. Not only did you focus on women jazz musicians, but you were able to really integrate the theme and story of women's empowerment. How did you decide to align the theme in that manner?
I've been a very, very active person in the women's movement since it first started. And all of my work has some of that as its theme, the empowerment of women and the empowerment of people in general. And the fact that I had so many black women in the film who brought that theme in, I thought was really important. And then it seemed like we were setting the whole film and the whole story against the history of America, and with those dominant themes throughout. And it just emerged that way. And, you know, part of it emerged from who I am, and part of it emerged from what they brought to the film. So when you're making a documentary, you don't really know what you're going to make. You just go out there and do your darndest and try to get it as honest as possible. And that whatever comes at you, you're really aware of it. And then, like I said, Edward was so in tune to all of this. And it was interesting, too, because coming at it as an outsider, because he comes from England, he had this other kind of overview of America that it was interesting, that he saw it in certain ways, too. And he imposed that on it. So, yes?
Yeah, I have a question. I've been wondering about this stuff most of the film. That on the International Sweethearts of Rhythm, and even at the school, Piney Woods, you see them sort of foregrounding that we ought to do this international thing because we have Indian, Chinese, Japanese, Negro, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Well, I'm looking at your interviews, and I see Willie Mae Wong. Willie Mae ain't too much of a Chinese name, so I'm trying to figure out, was that her original name?
No.
Okay, she changed it to Willie Mae.
No.
And kept the Wong.
Mr. Jones at the school, Mr. Lawrence C. Jones, who was the head of Piney Woods School, he had a very keen sense of the theatrical. And he knew that a name like Willie Mae Wong was going to appeal to people, and he renamed her.
Okay. All right.
Yes. Anything else? Yes.
When you first started putting this together, what kind of response did you get from others about it? Were it encouraging or discouraging responses?
No, from the very beginning, I started getting a lot of encouragement, especially from some men in the music business who were really shocked. My executive producer, which means the man who got me the first money for it and has helped me all through this, is a man who used to be the head of the Grammys, of NARIS, the people who do the Grammys, Mike Green. And when I brought this to him, I brought a package. We made up a package of photographs and little stories about each of these people. And when I showed it to him, he was like, come on, I don't believe this. I've never heard of most of these women. And he looked at that picture, a picture of Melba Liston playing trombone, and he told me later, that picture is what sold me. He said, that woman, that elegance that she had with that trombone, I knew there was a story there that I didn't know anything about. And his father had been a band leader in the South. He's from Atlanta. And he never heard of any of this. Had he never heard of the International Sweethearts of Rhythm? So I knew then there was a story here.
I think we have time for one more question. Then we have the last.
Yes.
Earlier you mentioned how heartbreaking Byron's bitterness was. I was just wondering, did you encounter that attitude with the whole lot of the other women, or did they overall retain their passion and love for music?
Vi, Red, and one woman drummer, a white woman, are the only two that I encountered who really maintained a bitterness about the era. The rest of the women loved their music so much that they were willing to just take life as it came. You know, women, we're a lot easier. Anyway, those were the only two that I found who were really bitter about it. I can't thank you enough. You've been just a really delightful audience.
For the email, I want to thank Pi again for co-hosting the event. Make sure to fill out the survey, and hope to see you next week at our film.
If you want t-shirts,
Oh, yes.
if you want t-shirts that we don't have your size, sign up with your email and we'll let you know about it.